NFL Week 13 Eli Manning sits. National anthem and protests anticipated. Injury updates, ATS and fantasy advice. Top storylines, injury news, fantasy football, ATS betting tips, picks. The focus this weekend turns to three games that have great implications for the NFC South after a week in which the demotion of Eli Manning dominated headlines. Manning's consecutive starts streak comes to an end at 210 after the ham-handed handling of his benching by the New York Giants, a two-win team eager to evaluate its talent, even though General Manager Jerry Reese and Coach Ben McAdoo may be gone by the time the 2018 season begins. Geno Smith will replace Manning in their late afternoon game against the 5-6 Raiders in Oakland. As for the NFC South, the 9-2 Minnesota Vikings will take their vaunted defense to Atlanta for an early afternoon game against the 7-4 Falcons. Although the Vikings are comfortably ahead in the NFC North, the Falcons need to win to hang on to the second wildcard spot or make noise in the division, given that the Saints and Panthers enter this week's play at 8-3. Speaking of those two teams, Carolina travels to New Orleans for a 4:25 p.m. EST game. The last time these two played, in Week 3, the Saints were dominant on offense and forced 3 turnovers in a 34-13 victory. Sunday night, the Philadelphia Eagles will take their NFL best 10-1 record to Seattle, playing an injury-hampered 7-4 Seahawks team. The Seahawks trail the Los Angeles Rams, who play at Arizona, by a game in the NFC West. If the Eagles wrap up the NFC East, it will mark the 14th time in the last 15 seasons that a team wins its division the season after finishing last or tied for last. If the Eagles win on Sunday, it'll be the 14th time in the last 15 seasons that a team wins its division the season after finishing in last or tied for last place. #FlyEaglesFly.Twitter.com/Uzzle5v37n, NFL, @NFL. December 2, 2017. The Eagles can make a bit of history, too. A victory by 20 or more points would be their 5th in a row by that margin, tying the record last accomplished by the 1999 St. Louis Rams, who happened to win the Super Bowl. 4 other teams have did the same thing, minus the Super Bowl, of course: the 1961 Packers, 1961 Oilers, the 1953 Eagles, and 1949 Eagles. Philly took care of a bit of paperwork Saturday, reaching agreement with wide receiver Alshon Jeffrey on a 4-year, $52 million contract extension. Top storylines: President Trump took note last week of the just under 2 dozen players who continue to take a knee or in some other way demonstrate to raise awareness of social injustice and police brutality. At least 24 players kneeling this weekend at NFL stadiums that are now having a very hard time filling up, he tweeted last Tuesday. The American public is fed up with the disrespect the NFL is paying to our country, our flag and our national anthem. Weekend out of control. By the Associated Press's count, roughly 23 plays demonstrated. Later in the week, the NFL and the Players Coalition reached an accord to provide $89 million over 7 years to spur activism, but there's no sign that the demonstrations, even though they have waned over the season, will end. Read more. In other news, Jimmy Time, the 49ers are handing the keys to Jimmy Garoppolo. Read more. Redskins mole moves. After a crushing loss to the Cowboys, the Redskins will determine whether to shut down Jordan Reed and Trent Williams. Read more. Finding a home for Eli. If Eli Manning is finished with the Giants, where might he land in 2018? Reminder, he's under contract through 2019 and has a no-trade clause in his contract. Read more. Archie on Eli, a heartbroken Eli Manning never envisioned, until now, playing for somebody else, his father says. Read more. What Cam Newton needs. The Panthers desperately need old reliable Greg Olsen for a shot at a playoff run. Read more. Vegas is not happy. NFL gambling favorites are covering the spread at an absurd rate and Vegas hates it. Read more. Injury news: Rodgers update. Aaron Rodgers marked his 34th birthday Saturday by practicing for the first time since breaking his right collarbone October 15. Rodgers, who was placed on the injured reserve list, designated to return, the day after having 2 plates and a number of screws inserted on October 19, may have elated Packers fans by showing off his arm before the game last week in Pittsburgh, but there still are a number of steps to be completed before he would be cleared by medical personnel. He would be eligible to return under rules 2 weeks after resuming practice, conceivably for the Week 15 game against Carolina. Rodgers' display last week, featuring passes of 30 and 50 or so yards, was impressive and at a minimum showed that he is on schedule in his recovery. Because Saturday's practice is closed to reporters, it is unclear how much or how well he did. Most of his work was expected to be limited to the scout team and individual drills. "You saw him throwing out there in Pittsburgh," quarterbacks coach Alex Van Pelt said. "He's doing well. He's getting healthy, and he's following right along in rehab. He's probably ahead of the curve a little bit, but there's really not anything to talk about until there's something to talk about. One hurdle is a scan that will reveal whether the bone has healed. Because scans impede healing, those are used conservatively and he will not be scanned until sometime after the December 10th game against the Browns. First of all, I want to be healthy, that's the most important thing," Rodgers said in early November. "But if we're healthy in 8 weeks, after the injury, and it would make sense to come back, then I'm going to come back." He added that, as when he broke his left collarbone in 2013, there won't be a decision made until that bone is healed, so it's not even a conversation if it's not where it needs to be. And, of course, the Packers, who play the Bucs on Sunday and then the Browns, need to be where they need to be, in a playoff push, to justify the risk to Rodgers in tough games against the Panthers, Vikings and Lions. A new Chargers kicker, Nick Novak, was placed on Saturday and the Chargers promoted Travis Coons, their third full-time kicker this season, to the active roster. Brown out? Steelers wide receiver Antonio Brown did not practice for the second straight day Saturday because of a toe injury, putting him in jeopardy of missing the Monday night game against the Cincinnati Bengals. Over the last 2 games, Brown has caught 20 passes for 313 yards and 5 touchdowns. Brown hasn't missed a game in over 4 seasons and is officially listed as questionable, but coach Mike Tomlin rarely uses players who miss practice 2 days before the game. If any player is an exception to Tomlin's rule, though, Brown could be it. Key players listed as questionable: Amir Abdullah, neck TJ Lang, foot Jimmy Smith, Achilles Richard Matthews, hamstring Tamba Hali, knee Matt Forte, knee Matt Slater, hamstring Charles Clay, knee Jameis Winston, shoulder Deshaun Jackson, foot Aaron Jones, knee Clay Matthews, groin Eli Apple, hip David Emerson, foot Malcolm Brown, knee Adrian Peterson, back Ryan Kalil, neck Greg Olsen, foot Marshawn Lattimore, ankle Joe Walker, neck Jimmy Graham, ankle Earl Thomas. Heel Fantasy Football Advice Week 13 Cheat Sheet: What to do as injuries take a toll late in the season. Read more. Best, worst matchups: Phillip Rivers and the Chargers have a good chance to put up big points. Read more. 5 moves you must make for Week 13. This might be a good time to add Josh Gordon. Read more. Week 13 start/sit. It's time to go all in on Marshawn Lynch this week. Read more. The Fantasy Football Beat. Don't be afraid to bench Kareem Hunt and other studs. Listen ATS betting tips, picks, the top trends and insights from Las Vegas. Read more.